technology to allow every developer to realize their full vision.
Where are the games at?
Where are the games?
Where are the games?
It's dry. Where are the games?
I kind of keep waiting for them to do their thing.
I don't see anything.
These are easily the most pointless upgrades I've ever experienced.
What is the point of buying a console if you can just make a PC?
If you're gonna have everything on PC, why not just buy a PC and abandon the console?
Where are the games? Where are the deadlines? Where are the projects? Where are the teases? Like, it feels weird that it's like,
Why buy consoles?
Now comes the fun part. We get to see how the development community takes advantage of that feature set.
Alright guys, what's going on? This is your boy Lago, one half of Endure, and welcome to an episode of Generation N. So, this one is a kind of a different video per se. It's literally looking at not only over the years, but again, the generation we're in right now, 9th, and how things got to where it is. Now, the reason again I brought up this thing is about video games, the games itself, the software. That's what's important to make the why you buy a console. I mean, it's the same thing like if you buy a DVD player or a Blu-ray player. If you don't have the Blu-rays and stuff like that, why would you buy those players, right? So, well, we're gonna talk about the bottom end and the top end. Sony has their own video. You'll see. I did it with you'll see it with I did it with Lady Decade, with her talking about how Sony is going with it forth and back and forth or whatever. They're in the middle. They have some first party games, but then they don't have. But they still got problems trying to figure out what the hell they're trying to do. The console is very, I'm not gonna deny it. Plays well. I have no problem with it. It's big and chunky and all this stuff, but it's a good middle. It has what's needed to be a console, in my opinion. I'm not using it for a 4K Blu-ray player because I have a 4K Blu-ray player, which I got it cheaper than that. The days of the gimmicks of that has worn off a little bit because now everybody Netflix and stuff. I'm not one of those people because I like physical, so yeah. But now take me have to figure out how to make a 4K DVD or at least a 2K or whatever DVD player, because I do want to put DVDs, make movies on disc and have them so at least have them physical for a long time to go. But that's beside the point. We're gonna talk about, but they're in the middle. So now you have Xbox, which is, as you can see on the screen, lost the console war and is redefining gaming. And then you're gonna see, we're gonna talk about Nintendo, and also a brief touch at how a lot of people right now are starting to play retro games, and that's what killed me. People like, oh man, we're not persevering, blah 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 blah. I'm gonna attack that as well too. So let's get into it.
This is the Xbox Series X, Microsoft's most powerful flagship console. For a long time, you needed an Xbox to play games like Halo or Gears of War.
Yep.
Then Microsoft decided you don't. So it launched a monthly subscription service that lets users play the latest games on a bunch of other devices. But it's increasingly competitive and will take a lot of investment to make it work. So will this shift pay off? And what does it mean for the future of the console? This is the economics of Xbox. Today, with more than 30 game studios, Xbox is an industry mainstay.
But it had to really earn that position in the market.
The console war began in the 1970s, when video game companies started competing to create a more powerful console and win more customers. By the 90s, the biggest players were Sony, Nintendo, and Sega. And in 1997, consumer spending on consoles surpassed arcades for the first time. A few years later...
And again, here's the thing. When it comes to the console war thing, I've said it before in many other stuff, but I'll say it here. In the console war stuff, I have no problem with the console war in the regards of, hey, let's make gaming competitive so we could have that competitive, having a competitive somebody to keep you on your Q's and keys and stuff like that, in your I's, crossing your T's, making you push further, is not a bad thing. So in that regard, I love the console wars for that. Yes, Xbox is good for certain things, PlayStation is good for certain things, Nintendo is good for certain things, and then you make your choices. The problem that I have, and why I'm doing this series, is because the one main thing is we're having these consoles is so we could play games. And if the games ain't good, and they're buggy, and they're a mess, and you can't play them, and you don't own them, and then they're delisted and all the other stuff, and you don't make first party games to make me think, why should I buy your special piece of plastic? Then that hurts the industry in total. I don't want Nintendo to be the only person in the video game market. Why? Because they will get complacent, and then they'll just put trash out. Sony just looked at Microsoft as a competitor, not Nintendo, and so do Xbox the same way, and they're like, oh, so when Sony's up, they're like, we beat Xbox, we don't really care. And then that's where you get like the PlayStation 5 Pro and all kind of crazy things for costs. And hey, I did a video about sticks, the Sony scam with the sticks and stuff like that, with the stick drift and everything. So when you're cocky, you could do stuff. And Nintendo has had that as well too, with the Wii to the Wii U not being that they made a mistake in that regard. They should have changed the name. I've done videos about it, but there was a little bit cocky, yes. So I have a problem for the console wars in that regard. Now to say which plastic is better than anybody plastic, I don't give a dang. I don't care. That's why my phrase at the end of every video is always, your perfect is not my perfect, and my perfect is not your perfect. Enjoy the games on any console, including PC, because that's what it is. Give us the games.
Microsoft entered the scene with its first-generation Xbox. To entice customers into their ecosystems, most of these companies tried to keep the prices on their consoles as low as possible, selling them at a loss. Xbox loses up to $200 per console, but the brands made up the difference by selling games and other accessories.
The more consoles you sell, the more software you're going to sell with it.
The PlayStation outsold the Xbox every single time. Microsoft only came close to beating Sony with the Xbox 360. Analysts say this was because the PlayStation 3, which ran customers up to $600, was priced too high. But the Xbox lost ground with the next generation, and ultimately, it lost the console war. In 2017, Xbox launched Game Pass, positioning itself as a services brand.
It's more interested in making content available to people on whatever device they choose to play on.
Game Pass is a tiered service. The least expensive plans offer gaming on either console or PC, and the most expensive plan has multi-device gaming and other features like streaming games from the cloud and access to certain games the day they're released. In essence, Microsoft is betting that it can get more customers if they don't have to buy a console. This model also gives the company a recurring revenue stream, so it doesn't have to rely as much on blockbuster successes.
So Game Pass solves the problem on the consumer side by making lots of content available for cheap, and on the business or the supply side in terms of offsetting the financial volatility associated with entertainment.
Microsoft's head of game...
Now, I'll say this. This is basically what Google tried to do with Game Stadia. That's what they tried to do. So Microsoft is basically taking that spot. Okay, got it. There's a problem still though with that, because that lady just said that they don't need to make blockbusters again. I mean, the blockbuster approach. If you don't make good games, that system can still fall away too. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Oh, you got a service. Netflix will fall apart if Netflix didn't had some stuff that they have that, you know, exclusive, and they know that. if they ain't got Hulu, the same thing. So if even though it's not a DVD or something physical, whatever, HBO, if they didn't have Dragons, House of Dragons and Game of Thrones and stuff like that, there will be less. I'm not saying it won't be less because HBO always had their own stuff. Well, let's go further. They always had their own content, and that's why I say that's when there's another video you guys are gonna see. I did it last week. Last week, where Phil said, which it is a truth and a lie in the both, when he said, "Wow, if we go out and make better games or make exclusive games, that will not change the outcome of winning the console war." He is correct. But it does make sense, so you can, without having something, you're not going to have the library to people to come to your service. As much as people hate on the Wii U, as I said before, it was not a commercial success, but it wasn't a financial failure. And there was a lot of games on the Wii U, people, even though a lot of games got put into the Switch, Nintendo, a lot of people still want to play. Now, for your Xenoblade, Mario Paper still was good on that. I know people didn't like it, but I liked it. There, Rodeo Sky Soldier, like they got many other places I could talk about. But yes, that's the difference.
Phil Spencer has said Game Pass is profitable.
And I think it will stay in that 10 to 15% of our overall revenue.
But Microsoft isn't the only one stepping into the subscription world. In 2022, Sony merged its subscription services, PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now, and relaunched it to compete with Game Pass. There are two key things that give Microsoft an edge. First, it's a much larger company with lots and lots of money. And for the past decade, Microsoft has been using that money to acquire game studios, beefing up its library. In 2014...
Yeah, but also beefing up the library, but doing what with it? That's the difference. You beefing it up, okay. And what are we doing with this said beef? Are we making games? Apparently not. Because even games that were made, as we saw, what happened? They got shut down.
It bought Mojang, the maker of Minecraft, for $2.5 billion. In 2021, it bought ZeniMax Media, owner of Fallout and Doom, for $8.1 billion. And in 2023, it finalized the purchase of Activision Blizzard, the maker of Call of Duty and Candy Crush, for $75.4 billion.
To put it in perspective, that is a little bit less than what Sony makes annually.
Exactly. Second, as a giant tech company, Microsoft owns lots and lots of data centers, over 300 worldwide, some of which help support Game Pass and cloud gaming.
The incumbents like Nintendo and Sony, they live and die on great content and this magnificent retail distribution infrastructure that they've built. So it's in Microsoft's interest to push into its data centers and its infrastructure in the cloud, because it can't beat Sony and Nintendo at retail.
This puts it in an arena that mainly...
And also in good games, which is true. That's the way, and the thing about it, they came close in the 360 era. That's the part that's like, man, if you just did that, that'll be all good. But nope. Not really.
This puts it in an arena that mainly other massive tech companies like Amazon, Nvidia, and Google can really compete in. But there are lots of obstacles. To start, adoption has been slow. In 2020, it targeted 71% subscriber growth and reached 86%. But the following year, it fell short. And in 2022, it missed its target by a long shot.
Some people are just not comfortable with the idea of not actually owning a game. They may want to play a game, put it down for 6 months and pick it up later or a year later or more. And it may not be in the subscription service anymore after that time.
So as of 2020...
Exactly. And that's why I said, that's why you want me to jump through all these hoops and everything, and then I can't own my own game? I got a problem with that. I really do. So that makes itself very, very interesting. A very interesting setup, because that's one of the reasons I don't care for that stuff. Like, I'm sitting there right now, you see shooting range right there. Ain't no way I'm playing shooting range like that on my thing, on my phone. Screw that, or tablet. Nah, I need me a nice tactile buttons. And funny enough, today they had a video on Good Morning America of people saying, yeah, touch is not responsive. A lot of people don't like touch. They want to go back to buttons because at least you have a tactile feel, and also you know when you press the button, you know what the button does exactly.
Game Pass has amassed 34 million subscribers. Some of the biggest challenges are specific to cloud gaming, a feature included in Game Pass's top tier. Traditionally, game data was stored locally on cartridges, discs, or downloaded straight to the console. With online multiplayer games, data like each player's actions were streamed. But with cloud gaming, the entire game is streamed to your device, which can be laggy.
If it's a competitive game, a millisecond can mean the difference between winning and losing.
Yep.
Cloud gaming is also expensive to operate.
The economics have changed, but they haven't immediately changed to only run a profit. Both of those offerings, whether those are product-based and conventional or whether they are streaming and more digital, both of those run at a loss in principle, but to recuperate and to earn money in those contexts is a very different proposition.
One report found that just 6% of gamers around the world were subscribed to a cloud gaming service in 2023. Still, experts believe it will grow substantially.
Cloud gaming is one of those few components where they could possibly thrive and lead, even if that's a much more modestly sized industry.
Microsoft isn't getting rid of the Xbox anytime soon. Later this year, it will release new versions of its current generation, the Series X and S. But it's clear that Xbox views its content as the future of the company, not its hardware.
It is incredibly difficult for these large companies, in spite of their resources, to be agile and innovative. And so, they're always watching someone else just run the show. And so in many ways, you could make the argument that the current effort and investment towards Game Pass and xCloud and all of the things that they're building and acquiring goes towards perhaps finally being in the driver's seat for the first time,
giving it the chance to win whatever the new gaming war will be.
Okay, so let me get so you hear that, and again, it's funny, this at the end instead you need the software, that's the whole point of my video Sega saying that.
This is what
So that's my whole point of showing that situation, of saying, hey, it's the games, it's the software. That's the whole point of this. Now, we went from the last, and we talked about that stuff. Now we're going to number one in the generation, which is Nintendo. How Nintendo competes differently than Sony and Microsoft and become number one. Again, I don't care if they're number three, like it was with the Wii U. I was having fun playing games. Point blank, period. Give me the games.
Nintendo originally was. Yes, it was So what has driven the $44 billion empire? This is the economics of Nintendo. Nintendo is different from its competitors Sony and Microsoft, thanks in part to its low-cost hardware. Microsoft's Xbox makes no profit on its hardware.
Yep.
Consoles are actually sold at a loss in the market. So when somebody goes and they buy an...
No. Your consoles are sold at a loss, Phil. Not everybody's like that.
Xbox at their local retailer, we're subsidizing that purchase somewhere between $100 and $200 with the expectation that we will recoup that investment over time through accessory sales and storefront.
And Sony only recently began to make a profit on the PlayStation 5. Then there's Nintendo.
Their technology is usually 5 or 6 years behind in terms of state of the art, but that means that they're cheaper to produce And that means that Nintendo is much, much more profitable on their hardware business.
About half of Nintendo's profit in 2022 came from hardware sales. They've dominated the market when it comes to handheld consoles. One of it.
So you hear that? Half came from what? Hardware. Why? Because they know, hey, I just need to give you a device to play our games. I don't need to be the most powerful. I don't need to be the most graphical intense. Because our games are not graphical intense. That's why.
Big successes, the Game Boy, launched in 1989.
Nintendo was really early to the party with handheld. They're kind of credited with inventing the console, although they were probably third or fourth.
The Game Boy had a longer battery life compared to some of its competitors. 4 shades of gray, nuanced gameplay, and had Tetris, one of the top-selling video games of all time. Eventually, Nintendo's Game Boy became the third most sold console in the company's history, selling 119 million units to date. The company continued to innovate, releasing new hardware for its games, from the GameCube, Nintendo DS, the Wii, and to its most recent success, the Switch, with more than 122 million units sold.
You can play it at home like a console on your big screen TV, but you could pick it up and take it on the go, and it becomes a handheld device. And that's pretty novel. We haven't really seen anything that's a hybrid like that before.
Sales of the Switch device and its games accounted for about 94% of Nintendo's sales revenue in its 2021 fiscal year. And today, it's the second best-selling game console in Nintendo's history, and continues to be a driving factor of its revenue. The success of Nintendo's consoles is also due to its software. In other words, its games. In 2022, Nintendo had 19 first-party titles that sold over 1 million units each, exclusive to its consoles.
The difference between the others and Nintendo is that Nintendo historically has produced about 50% of all the games sold on its hardware system, and the other guys are typically under 10% of the games sold on their systems. So they make a small fraction of the software that's played on PlayStation and Xbox. Nintendo makes more than half.
Case in point, Animal Crossing New Horizons release in April 2020 created higher demand for the only console carrying it, the Switch.
Nintendo makes games exclusively for the most part for its own devices. If you want to play a Nintendo game like Legend of Zelda, you need Nintendo hardware.
Exactly.
In fact, Nintendo's first-party games generate over 70% of its sales. Its best sellers in 2022 were all Nintendo first-party games. And
who would thought? You make games and you make a lot of money. 70% of your profits came from... Well, imagine that.
Type of content Nintendo makes is also different than its competitors.
Let's keep in mind, Nintendo characters are very cute. Nintendo is known for making family-friendly games for the most part, so it appeals to a different crowd than some of the other publishers. You won't see blood or gore or foul language. But even Nintendo a couple of years ago dabbled into the shooter genre. When we think of shooters, right, we think of Call of Duty, Fortnite. They take a very family-friendly approach with Splatoon. It's a shooter, but you're shooting paintballs.
The company's next iteration, bringing these family-friendly characters to a larger arena and building another generation of fans. In February 2023, Nintendo opened its first theme park outside of Japan. And in April, it's releasing a Super Mario Bros. Movie starring Chris Pratt.
It's a Mario. That's smart, because that's going to expose the Nintendo brand to hundreds of millions of people who haven't ever owned a Switch. I don't think that Nintendo is necessarily worried about whether somebody who goes to the theme park will buy a Nintendo console or buy a game. But they want those people to be aware of the Nintendo brands. And they want them to know who Mario is and who Zelda is and who Yoshi is and who Pikmin is.
It is risky to start a new franchise, and sometimes new properties just don't resonate. But they have plenty, a very deep library, and they've stuck with that for the most part and iterated on it and modernized it. We'll probably be playing Legends of Zelda for another 20, 30 years. Mario is probably not going anywhere. You know, he's just going to live forever and keep that mustache and keep everyone happy for many years to come.
Yeah, and here's what I think. I've said it before, and as they just said right there, which I've stated myself, I said that Nintendo has legitimately made sure, again, if God bless me, I get a kid. My kid gonna know about Nintendo. If my sister gets a child, Katie's child, my nephew or niece gonna know about Nintendo. Now, there's a lot of people out there who still don't know about Nintendo as much. They know here and there, and then the movie and the theme park gets those people. As you can say, hey, well, let's go to the theme park and all that stuff and add it in there. So that's why I said it is a smart move by them to do this. A very, very smart move. And that part right there is what I'm talking about, is that. So we have that, and then we have retro gaming as it's been going now.
2021. Where I'm at right now is the happiest I have ever been. Buying, selling, and
From Atari to Nintendo, classic video games are making a comeback.
Rich DeMuro goes back in time to explain what's going on. Good morning.
Yeah, it's Back to the Future this morning. You know who never gets old? This guy right here.
Yes.
I mean, from when I was a kid to now, this has been sitting on my desk, by the way, for about 9 years.
Okay.
So, and it still looks just as relevant as ever, right?
Why did you keep it? Did you just say to yourself, well, someday I'm going to need Mario here?
I knew this day was coming. So I just figured I'd leave it on my desk. Yeah.
Good.
Now, today's video games have amazing graphics, cutting-edge consoles, and high price tags to match, but some gamers are trading all of that for old-school graphics and games that come at a much lower price. Recently, I visited a used video game shop to find out why. At this store, old school sounds. Dylan Thorpe opened Retro Respawn in 2021.
Where I'm at right now is the happiest I have ever been.
Buying, selling, and trading used video games and consoles.
So how much does a game like this go for? $8.
$8?
Yeah. It's mostly just because a bunch of them exist.
The former video game designer says older customers are reliving their childhood. Younger customers are influenced by social media.
They rather buy an experience that they know is going to be good, opposed to taking the risk on a new game that may not be good.
Nostalgia is like a rolling 30 years. You know, you're always kind of nostalgic for about 30 years ago.
YouTube creator John Reddick explores 80s nostalgia, retro gaming, and more on his channel, Gen X Grown Up.
Not only are we nostalgic for it because it's our childhood, but it was also the era where paradigm shifts took place. We went from analog to digital. We went from electronics being clunky to electronics being in your pocket. We went from vinyl to Spotify and back to vinyl because they loved it so much from back then.
That is true.
You guys remember that?
For consoles,
that is true. And it's funny how, they got this whole thing where you gotta blow. No, remember that's a bad thing because it corrode because it's copper. But anyway, that's the point I was gonna bring out. Like I said, now you got people, as he said it earlier, the newer games are like, I don't know, they're not good. They might be broken. They might have problems. They might gotta be online problems. And what are these? Plug and play. Boom, bam, game's playing. Is it expensive? Yes. But if you want a guaranteed game that's going to work and you want to play for fun, you can't go wrong because it's been tested. It's tested games.
PS2 and GameCube sell well, so does Nintendo Switch.
Mario always sells. People love Call of Duty. Believe it or not, FIFA sells.
But overall, Pokemon is tops.
It's hard for me to honestly keep a lot of this stuff in stock, believe it or not.
Of course, one cartridge immediately brought me right back. Many, many hours spent playing this as a kid. And that's precisely the point.
A lot of these people, again, since it's mostly nostalgia-based, are buying their childhood back.
Let's look at that smart move.
So bottom line, don't discount those games that you might have around gathering dust. You can play them or trade them. And I know I never get enough of some of those classic games, especially Tetris. And I love, and I'm sure many people do, introducing the games that I loved as a kid to the new generation, like my kids.
And does that work? Do they like
Yeah,
them?
they do. They always end up going back to Roblox and Minecraft, but at the end of the day, it's fun to kind of say, like, here's what we used to do.
Right.
And some of their
Dad, I don't care about that.
Some of their kids are really into it. This segment was actually inspired by one of my kids' friends who goes to that store. And when I heard that, I was like, wait, what? And sure enough, it's like a story is born.
Right.
Anyway, richontech.tv if you want to learn more about retro gaming, or tell me your favorite game.
And good for you, Rich, and everything. So that leaves my point. That leaves my point right there. So this whole video that I just did right there is going from last place, first place, a little bit of history, why gaming games itself are still important, even with Google, Xbox doing what they're doing, as they just show Nintendo makes a lot of money from their games. But also, when people are like, oh, then if you want to play game, and I was getting on Nintendo, oh, you don't want to keep the game, like the video I did with the young man who talked about Power and everything. You have the consoles. If you didn't trade in the games, all you gotta do is do what, like I just said before, plug in and play. Boom. I have a Nintendo 3D. I have a Nintendo DS. It's kind of messed up, and the DS hinges were the worst. But I am looking forward to finding a DS game, because I have a lot of Game Boy Advance games that I still love, and we have all till now. That's why I still have a PlayStation. A PlayStation Dreamcast, still there. Super Nintendo, still there. Need to buy my 64. I got the 64 games. I just don't got I have pieces of the console, because sadly something happened when the place I had the console get messed up. But I'll gladly buy a 64. No problem, and start playing them old classic games that I enjoyed and played and had fun with. I still have the power supply. The power supply, I still have that, and also the controller, of course. I have controllers because you can't get rid of them controller. Of course, the smoky and the smoky black is what I have. But if you want to keep the archive or whatever, okay. Again, you want to emulate, as I said before, go ahead and emulate. I have nothing against that. When you start selling the emulation, and when you start selling the emulation or selling the games, that causes a problem, and I did a video in the one with the Power World. I talked about that, point to point. But in that regard, yes, thank you for showing us how, again, the good old days of gaming, man. The good old days of gaming, and it is literally how we've done stuff before. Is because the games. That's why we buy these heavy, well, not heavy, but yeah, it's a PlayStation 5. Why we buy these big, compact computers to do all these things. All right. Hi, thank you for joining me again for another episode of Generation N. Again, comment, like, subscribe to the video, comment. You don't like it, thumbs it down. Again, help us out in algorithms, do stuff, but. Again, yeah, thank you. And check you out in the next episode. Again, I do these videos Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And you can join in the chat with everybody else or just talk. And last but not least, yeah, join me in if you think that you have a squabble with what I'm saying and you want to have a peaceful debate, a chill debate, because like I said, I'm not going to argue like ferocious or not. Yeah, check out anytime you see me on Game and Chill or GC. You see GC live on the Endure channel. I'm playing a game live, so you could join in with anybody else in the chat and just talk about stuff, and we talk about it. All right. With that said, remember, there's no perfect games out there. What's perfect to you is not perfect to me. What's perfect to me is not perfect to you. Simply enjoy games on all consoles, including PC. Peace.